naturalization ceremony and for their continued partnership with my agency, the Immigration Service, over the years. And we are honored to have Justice Ginsburg and Judge Howell with us to mark this special occasion. Today, we welcome 31 new U.S. citizens representing 26 different countries. Congratulations to each of you. On behalf of the men and women of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, it is an honor to address you as my fellow Americans. And I would add that I, too, have immigrant family. My mother immigrated here from Peru. I don't think there are any Peruvians in the bunch, but I know the experience that you're having today very well. I understand it very intimately. Upon taking the oath of allegiance that you just took, you have joined a nation of citizens, both naturalized and native-born, who are united by a belief in the rights that are described and guaranteed by the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights, collectively known as the Charters of Freedom, all around us. Today, we commemorate the 227th anniversary of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, known as the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights, on display here in this rotunda, enshrines many of our nation's most valued freedoms. The National Archives provides access to these documents, such as the Bill of Rights, so that the visitors here can experience firsthand the connection between the ideals that are captured on historic parchment and the freedoms and the rights that they guarantee to living Americans. Through this connection, we are reminded of the importance of participating in our government by fully exercising the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. You now have a vested interest to ensure the well-being and success of your country, the United States of America. As you build your lives, I ask that you use your talents to give back to your community and your new country through civic participation, service, and active and committed citizenship. You can make positive contributions by volunteering at a local organization, serving in our armed forces, owning a business, running for public office, casting your vote on election day, and doing your part to keep our country secure. I am confident that your spirit and dedication will serve as an example for future generations of immigrants. As the agency responsible for administering the nation's lawful immigration system, and the agency responsible for all that you went through to get to this point, and I know what you went through, USCIS is honored to have been a part of your journey to U.S. citizenship. You may not have wanted us to be part of your journey, but we were. From the day that you first arrived in the United States to today, when you took the oath of allegiance. Before I finish, I would point out, you know, in 4 years, you all are going to have a very difficult decision to make, one that will be a true test of your citizenship, and that is, who are you going to root for in the World Cup in 2022? I'll leave that for you to decide individually, but I think at least you root for America first, and then let's see what happens. Thank you.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Justice Ginsburg was born in Brooklyn, New York. She received her BA from Cornell University, attended Harvard Law School, and received her law degree from Columbia Law School. She became a professor at Rutgers Law School in 1963, where she taught some of the first women in law classes and co-founded the Women's Rights Project at the American Civil Liberties Union. In 1973, she became the ACLU's General Counsel, where she argued gender discrimination cases, 6 of which brought her before the U.S. Supreme Court. In 1980, President Jimmy Carter nominated her to the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. And in 1993, President Bill Clinton nominated her as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. The notorious RBG is now a pop culture icon with legions of fans, and we are thrilled to have her with us today. As exciting as it is to have RBG herself with us this morning, equally exciting is to welcome back Bryant W. Johnson from the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, who just happens to be the person who called our ceremony to order, which he's done for many years, but he also happens to be the Justice's personal trainer and has written a terrific book, The RGB Workout, How She Stays Strong, and You Can Too. Please welcome Justice Ginsburg.
Thank you. Thank you, my fellow Americans. It is my great privilege to welcome you to citizenship in the democracy that is the USA. You number 31 and came here from 26 countries, alphabetically from China to Venezuela. Today, you join more than 20 million current citizens born in other lands who chose, as you have, to make the United States of America their home. We are a nation made strong by people like you, people who traveled long distances, overcame great obstacles, and made tremendous sacrifices, all to provide a better life for themselves and their families. My own father arrived in this land at age 13 with no fortune and speaking no English. My mother was born 4 months after her parents, with several children in tow, came by ship to Ellis Island. My father and my grandparents reached, as you do, for the American dream. As testament to our nation's promise, the daughter and granddaughter of immigrants sits on the highest court in the land. In America, land of opportunity, that prospect is within the realm of the achievable. What is the difference between a bookkeeper in New York City's Garment District and a Supreme Court justice? One generation, my own life bears witness. The difference between the opportunities available to my mother and those afforded me. You have studied our system of government and know of its twin pillars. First, our government has limited power. It can exercise only the authority given to it by the Constitution. And second, citizens of this country enjoy certain fundamental rights. Those rights are our nation's hallmark. They are set forth in the Bill of Rights and other provisions of the amendments to the Constitution. They are inalienable, yielding to no government decree. Our Constitution opens, as you have just heard, with the words, "We the people of the United States." By limiting government, specifying rights, and empowering the people, the founders of the United States proclaimed that the heart of America would be its citizens, not its rulers. After the words, "We the people of the United States," the Constitution sets out the aspiration to form a more perfect union. At the start, it is true, the Union very much needed perfection. The original Constitution permitted slavery and severely limited who counted among we the people. When the nation was new, only white property-owning men had the right to vote, the most basic right of citizenship. But over the course of our history, people left out at the beginning, people held in human bondage, Native Americans, and half the population, women, came to be embraced as full citizens. A French observer of early America, Alexis de Tocqueville, wrote that the greatness of America lies not in being more enlightened than other nations, but rather in her ability to repair her faults. Through amendments to our Constitution and court decisions applying those amendments, we abolished slavery, prohibited racial discrimination, and made men and women people of equal citizenship stature. In the vanguard of those perfections were people just like you, new Americans of every race and creed, making ever more vibrant our national motto, E pluribus unum, out of many, one. Though we have made huge progress, the work of perfection is scarcely done. Many stains remain. In this rich land, nearly a quarter of our children live in poverty. Nearly half of our citizens do not vote. And we still struggle to achieve greater understanding and appreciation of each other across racial, religious, and socioeconomic lines. Yet we strive to realize the ideal to become a more perfect union. As well-informed new citizens, you will play your part, a vital part in that endeavor, by first and foremost voting in elections, also serving on juries, and engaging in civil discourse and all the other things the director just mentioned. We sing of America, sweet land of liberty. Newcomers to our shores, people like you, came here from the earliest days of our nation to today, seeking liberty, freedom from oppression, freedom from want, freedom to be you and me. I would like to convey to you, finally, how a great American jurist, Judge Learned Hand, understood liberty. He explained in 1944 what liberty meant to him when he greeted a large assemblage of new Americans gathered in New York City's Central Park to swear allegiance, as you just did, to the United States. These are Judge Hand's words. Just what is this sacred liberty that must lie in the hearts of men and women? It is not the rootless, unbridled will. It is not freedom to do as one likes. I cannot define the spirit of liberty. I can only tell you my own faith. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which is not too sure that it is right. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which seeks to understand the minds of other men and women. The spirit of liberty is the spirit which weighs their interests alongside its own without bias. May the spirit of liberty, as Judge Hand explained it, be your beacon. May you have the conscience and the courage to act in accord with that high ideal as you play your part in helping to achieve a more perfect union. Every best wish.
Thank you, Justice Greenberg. much, Justice Ginsburg. I'm going to make some closing remarks before we have Bryant Johnson close the ceremony. Our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, and our Bill of Rights rest under glass in this room, as the archivist pointed out on all sides of us. The Bill of Rights, the collective name of the first 10 amendments to our Constitution, give us clear guidance about the inalienable rights each person holds. And these listed rights, including freedom of speech, religion, equal protection, due process, set rules about the mutual respect we owe each other and our shared responsibility to adhere to and uphold these rights, which are so critical to our civic order and to ensure we have the more perfect union that the Constitution set out as its goal. We have almost 328 million Americans living together, many with radically different views about the problems and the solutions confronting this nation, some of which Justice Ginsburg pointed out. This can sound messy, downright divisive, but no matter their differences or where they come from, as Americans, they each share the rights granted under the Constitution. Most Americans are here because their parents, grandparents, or more distant relatives made the courageous choice that each of you new citizens have made to leave the countries where they grew up, where they knew the language, where they had family and friends, to follow their dreams to this new country. This is not easy, and as Director Cisna acknowledged, many of you have waited, studied, and worked hard to arrive at this day. People do
Hey, happy holidays, everyone, from inside our newsroom here at Fox 5 DC. Pretty amazing to see Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg present at this naturalization ceremony. It's going on right now at the National Archives in downtown DC. 31 candidates for this swearing in from 26 different nations. And I don't know if any of you have ever been able to see a ceremony like this. I was able to be privy to one in Baltimore a few years ago, and it's pretty interesting to see. So now that her speech is sort of over, we're going to hang on to this and just sort of wrap it up with the rest of the ceremony. But take a look and take a listen and enjoy this morning as we stream this ceremony from the National Archives Museum in downtown Washington.
Like Justice Ginsburg, you have the right to practice your faith or not follow any religion at all if you don't want to. You have the right to speak freely about matters you care about, the right to privacy in your home. As citizens, you each have equal rights before the law with an equal share in the freedom to pursue your own version of happiness. Of course, our Constitution doesn't guarantee that you will find happiness, but the founders of the nation stated their intention in the Declaration of Independence to design a form of government where you are certainly free to try. And as citizens, we not only have rights, but we have duties and responsibilities. And as new citizens, I hope you make 3 choices about your lives as American citizens. First, I do hope you choose to be involved. We're a self-governing people. Self-government works best when its citizens are involved and informed. You should seek to inform yourselves, read and listen, and understand the choices we face as a nation. An educated citizenry is essential to the continuation of a self-governing country. Your children, your grandchildren, your family will learn the duties of citizenship by watching you. So when you go to vote, take your children with you to see how you do it. We have congressional elections every 2 years, presidential elections every 4 years. Pay attention in between to what our elected officials are doing, and talk to your children about what you're hearing and learning. Teach them through your action that not only are we free to complain about our political leaders or what we see going on around us, we can vote to change our leaders or vote to keep them. The United States may not be perfect, but we have a powerful tool in the voting booth to make improvements. I hope you also make a second choice. Choose to make a positive contribution to your communities. We expect you to be law-abiding, but as citizens, expect more from yourselves than that. We may not all be able to perform public service at the level of our speakers, the Archivist of the United States, or the head of the Citizenship and Immigration Service, or Justice Ginsburg, who serves on the front line of protecting our rights, but we can all do our part, whether it's picking up litter, helping a neighbor, or volunteering at your children's school. Finally, I hope you all make a third choice to share your stories. Many Americans take their citizenship for granted by telling your story about why you chose to come here and what you went through to get here helps your fellow Americans appreciate what we have in our country. Plus, America is a richer place because of your stories and the cultural experiences that you bring here with you. America's strength truly is the diversity of its people. So choose to be involved, choose to make a positive contribution to your community, and choose to tell your stories. I join our other speakers in congratulating you as America's newest citizens. By your conduct and your qualifications and actions here this morning, you have each earned your rightful place to be called an American citizen. So congratulations again to all of you.
All rise. This concludes the ceremony. This honorable court is now adjourned. At this moment, I need everyone to have a seat while we present the certificates of naturalization to my new brothers and sisters. Everyone, please have a seat. Thank you. Receiving line this way. Number one. Everyone rise, and we're going to come around, so forth and so on, and we go back to the seat.
pass 7 spending bills to keep the government open past next Friday. But right now, that's a tall hill to climb. There have been few negotiations, and both sides are dug in on their positions.
I want to be crystal clear. There will be no additional appropriations to pay for the border wall. It's done.
Democrats say they've given President Trump 2 options to fund the government, but the president says he won't accept unless those offers include more money for border security. President Trump wants $5 billion for border security. Democrats won't give more than $1.3 billion.
We have Homeland Security for a reason. Again, $5 billion can be well spent. They voted for $25 billion this year. Not to agree to $5 billion is just being stubborn. And, I just don't want to help Trump.
It was the topic of debate on the House floor today, pitting the current majority leader with the Democrat who is taking his place next year.
You know what the solution is? Sit down with us and come to a compromise. Not that it's your way or no way.
These are bills that are your bills that we compromised on, and we are prepared to vote for 99%. 99%.
But it ended with a sign of peace.
It's a little candy. Might sweeten the spirit, and you might even be more than like to work with us to solve the problem, and I yield back and Merry Christmas.
I thank the majority leader.
Congress has until December 21st to reach a deal, but the House doesn't meet again until Wednesday the 19th, giving them just 2 days to agree on a plan. In Washington, Ray Bogan, Fox News.
Well, this may just be a negotiating tactic, but when the House gets back to work next week on Wednesday, they'll have less than 3 days to figure this out. The money spigot here in Washington is about to get shut off, at least partially. And it all comes down to, by Washington standards, a relatively small amount of money, $5 billion to build additional walls along the southern border. And from the president, a plea to work together, saying on Twitter, "Let's not do a shutdown, Democrats. Do what's right for the American people." But he also included a video that didn't exactly calm the waters.
The Democrats are absolute hypocrites. All along, they've been supporting walls and supporting fences and supporting all sorts of border security.
In Congress, the debate has been intense.
Shutting down the government is stupid.
Sit down with us and come to a compromise. Not that it's your way or no way.
But soon after that, the House left town, and Democrats in the Senate are drawing a line.
I want to be crystal clear. There will be no additional appropriations to pay for the border wall. It's done.
Much of this will come down to public perception, and a new Fox News poll shows that neither side in Congress is exactly riding a wave of popularity. The Democratic and Republican leaders are all underwater, bracing for the blistering battle ahead. So will this become an extended debate through Christmas? Maybe. All House members have been warned that the schedule is subject to change. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
I'm shocked. I'm surprised. You never think that things are going to happen that close to home.
No, it's quite surprising because it's a national epidemic. It's been something that's been all over this country.
A sample of water from the Adam farm was found tainted with the strain of E. coli, which has sickened 59 people across the U.S. thus far. The lettuce from the farm is now under a recall. The Adam Brothers farm is co-owned by County Supervisor Peter Adam. The farm is a multi-generational farm in the community, and though the FDA has identified them as one of the sources of the outbreak, one resident says he still has faith in their farming.
I mean, I think there should still be confidence in the product that they put out because they're a long-standing family, farming family in town.
Federal agents believe the Adam farm is not the only source of the contamination. The Food and Drug Administration continues to check other regions growing romaine lettuce to find other sources of the E. coli outbreak. Government agencies warn consumers to avoid any romaine lettuce grown in Santa Barbara and San Benito counties, as well as Monterey. However, they do say anything grown after November 23rd should be safe to eat.
President Trump broke his self-imposed silence yesterday on the Cohen sentencing on Twitter, and in an interview with Harris Faulkner today, the president insisting he did nothing wrong.
Let me tell you, I never directed him to do anything wrong. Whatever he did on his own. He's a lawyer. A lawyer who represents a client is supposed to do the right thing. That's why you pay them a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera.
President Trump also said that the payments made to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal were not illegal, despite what the Southern District of New York prosecutors said, or what Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to, or what media company AMI admitted it did.
If it were even a campaign contribution, it's totally legal. You look at stories one after another, they're all legal. The great lawyers that do that stuff are saying there's nothing illegal.
The president does get backup from a former member of the Federal Election Commission. In an op-ed in the Heritage Foundation's Daily Signal, Hans von Spakovsky wrote that the payments were a private transaction, not subject to campaign finance laws.
That had nothing to do with the campaign, weren't dependent on the campaign, and therefore there was no violation of federal law when these payments were made.
Spakovsky's argument centers on a statute that states campaign expenses do not include payments used to fulfill any commitment, obligation, or expense of a person that would exist irrespective of the candidate's election campaign. In other words, Spakovsky claims Daniels and McDougal likely would have come forward regardless of whether Donald Trump was running for president.
The whole question comes down to whether hush money payments made to these women, whether that's a campaign-related expense as opposed to a personal expense. And it's very clear from prior actions of the Justice Department and the Federal Election Commission that this is not a campaign-related expense.
President Trump told Fox News Cohen only pled guilty because prosecutors were trying to embarrass him.
What he did is he made a deal to embarrass me. In order to embarrass me, they cut his term down. Pretty terrible stuff.
And he played down Cohen's significance in the Trump organization, saying he only hired Cohen after Cohen supported his bid to build Trump World Tower in New York at a condominium committee meeting.
He did very low-level work.
Why did
he
you
did
need
more
him?
public relations than he did law. He was on a committee, and he was so responsive and so good. And I said, he's a nice guy. I shouldn't have done it.
And there may be another investigation looming. The Wall Street Journal reports today that federal prosecutors in New York City are looking into possible misspending by the Trump Inaugural Committee. According to the Journal, prosecutors also want to know if big donors were looking to buy influence with the incoming administration. The press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, said if there is such an investigation, it has nothing to do with the president. At the White House, John Roberts, Fox News.
In the hustle and bustle of life, hundreds said they had to stop.
They didn't say anything really. They just came in and said that they were going to have somebody who was very special.
Others couldn't help but stare.
Excited.
You're excited?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anticipation ahead of a big surprise. You see, the kids at Children's Hospital have no idea.
I think it's Michelle Obama.
That is, if their parents don't give it away. The secret revealed.
Anybody who's brave enough to show me orange justice.
Okay.
And some moments are better shown, not said.
Let me try that. All right, Santa.
If you could tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Don't let fear guide you.
It was insane. I've looked up to her ever since I was really little.
Mrs. Obama has young fans and older ones too.
Just meeting somebody who's so influential in the world, I think is just really amazing.
This guy, the first in line at the local bookstore to get a signed copy of Michelle Obama's new book.
It's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and we haven't had a first lady like her. And that's awesome.
They call these happy tears, joyful waterworks. Worth your time.
Oh, I will do it 3-5 times over. It's awesome.
There was a line running up and down the bookstore, and back at the hospital, what looks like a parade outside. You see, life was put on hold for just a moment as the former First Lady made her way around Colorado.
A brazen burglary caught on camera as 3 thieves smashed through the front of this Chevron gas station on Folsom Boulevard. Just after 4 o'clock this morning, you can see the driver of a red pickup truck ram into the glass storefront. Surveillance video shows one man in a ski mask push his way through the glass to get into the mini-mart and then strap some sort of cable or tie-down around the ATM. Just moments later, the driver punches the gas and the ATM jolts through what's left of the glass. Another camera pointed toward the parking lot shows 3 men loading the machine into the bed of the truck before speeding off. All of this happened in about a minute, but it caused extensive damage to the store entrance. Hours after the thieves took off with the ATM, there's still plenty of evidence of the crime that happened here. You can see glass scattered around the pavement, bricks falling off the front of the building, and part of the ATM still laying on the sidewalk. As the store owner starts the process of cleaning up the mess, sheriff's detectives are in the early stages of their investigation. They believe this wasn't the burglars' first stop.
They did do this at another location here in Rancho Cordova also this morning, but were unsuccessful in actually getting the ATM machine out.
Officials say crimes like this don't happen very often in Rancho Cordova, and they're asking anyone who might know something about the bold thieves to get in touch with them.
We might be looking for a stolen vehicle or someone who may have been driving a vehicle that matches this description with some damage to the front or rear end.
In Rancho Cordova, Olivia DeJaneiro, Fox 40 News.
As President Trump moved to end the Iran nuclear deal and reimpose sanctions, hackers said to have ties to Iran allegedly tried to break into the personal emails of American officials responsible for enforcing those sanctions. That, according to an exclusive report by the Associated Press. The U.S. government has focused on Iran and cyber activity for decades, but experts say this recent hacking attempt could be an escalation of a long-standing problem.
It's hard to put this in context without knowing what their end motivation is. Is it espionage, which they have a long history of doing, or is it in this second category of using cyber to conduct destructive attacks?
Andrew Grotto's email was reportedly one of the targets. He worked as the senior director for cybersecurity policy under both President Obama and President Trump. The hackers are said to be part of a group known as Charming Kitten.
They're known for being a little sloppy and a little loud.
One of the group's hit list reportedly became public after the hackers accidentally left a server open to the internet. A London-based cybersecurity firm extracted a list of 77 addresses and turned them over to the AP. The AP says the list includes private accounts of high-profile defenders, detractors, and enforcers of the nuclear deal struck between Washington and Tehran, and more than a dozen U.S. Treasury officials. The Department of Treasury wouldn't get into specifics here, but a spokesperson told Fox News Homeland Security issued an alert on November 1st to private industries related to the Iranian sanctions. And the spokesperson says by default, that security alert applied to federal agencies, including the Department of Treasury. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Ellison Barber, Fox News. The Trump administration's new Africa strategy is called Prosper Africa. Administration officials say it's a direct rebuke of President Trump's critics who allege he's ignored the continent and point to disparaging comments he's made about African countries. First up on the agenda, countering the booming economic and political influence of two U.S. competitors in the region, China and Russia. Bolton roundly condemned China's trade and investment practices in Africa, labeling them predatory.
China uses bribes, opaque agreements, and the strategic use of debt to hold states in Africa captive to Beijing's wishes and demands. Its investment ventures are riddled with corruption and do not meet the same environmental or ethical standards as U.S. developmental programs.
He said both countries flout international laws in order to curry favor with Africa's elites, but he reserved his harshest critique for the Putin regime.
It continues to sell arms and energy in exchange for votes at the United Nations, votes that keep strong men in power, undermine peace and security, and run counter to the best interest of the African people.
National security officials tell Fox News President Trump's vision is a two-way street. He wants to push African leaders to start choosing U.S. investment over Russian and Chinese deals. But he also wants the U.S. private sector to choose Africa. And as with all Trump initiatives, America First is front and center.
All U.S. aid on the continent will advance U.S. interest.
Policy experts say it's a dramatic departure.
It was really the hallmark of the Obama administration to talk about African solutions to African problems. And the African Union was a big part of that. And Ambassador Bolton really didn't emphasize that at all.
But U.S. aid to Africa isn't drying up. Earlier this week, Secretary Pompeo committed $550 million to Senegal, one of West Africa's fastest growing economies, a move the administration says is a continuation of Bush and Obama administration policies. In Washington, Jillian Turner, Fox News.
Google will be shutting down its failed social network, Google Plus, earlier than planned. The reason? The company says a security bug led to a massive leak of some 52 million users' private data. The information breach allowed outside developers to get information about users, including name, email, and age, even if the profile was set to private. On the Plus side, no financial information was released, and so far Google says they haven't seen any evidence that would indicate the information was used illegally. This is actually the second data breach for Google+. Back in October, the company said some 500,000 users' data was compromised. At that time, Google said they'd shutter the social site in August of 2019. Now, they've moved that date to April. The bad news came just a day before Google's CEO testified on Capitol Hill, defending the tech giant's record on personal privacy.
Protecting the privacy and security of our users has long been an essential part of our mission. We've invested an enormous amount of work over the years to bring choice, transparency, and control to our users.
Google Plus was launched back in 2011 as an alternative to the more dominant Facebook, but it never caught on with users. In New York, I'm Brett Larson, Fox News.
just political BS.
Consumer Watchdog's leader Jamie Court fired up about the California Public Utility Commission's plan to charge a fee for text messaging.
I find it appalling that there is going to be a text tax because it's so visceral, it's so anti-consumer, and we haven't established a need for it.
But the CPUC says it does need the extra money to support programs like California Lifeline, which provides phones to low-income residents.
It says it's a government phone, the government should pay for it. Not the people, but the government.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, if it helps somebody, who's like in danger or, their kid's sick or something like that, they need to get picked up, I'm all for it.
According to a CPUC report, revenue for the program is falling as more people drop landlines and make fewer voice calls in favor of texting. The state reportedly lost more than $5 billion from 2011 to 2017.
How often would you say you text?
24/7, all day, every day. It's my job.
I text for work, I text socially. There's no way to count, hundreds at least.
It is unclear if the surcharge will be per text or a flat fee.
That would not be cool to pay a tax for text when I already pay for the service.
Consumer groups vowed to fight the so-called text taxed, one text at a time.
We are certainly going to urge the legislature to do an independent audit, and we're going to talk to the chairs of the relevant committees to see if they will take the Public Utilities Commission to task, because this is really a power grab.
Can you lend any insight into that? Have you guys been giving tests periodically?
What I know is that this thing has evolved over time.
Has it impacted your play calling at all in terms of, rolling him out to the side or anything like that?
No. No.
What was your understanding of, you mentioned it happened over time, what was your understanding of the injury during the last few games?
Again, this thing has just evolved. So, we were rolling.
Does that mean it's gotten worse since he appeared in the injury report in mid-October? Has it gotten worse since that point?
Has he felt worse?
Yes.
No.
Is his placement on the injury in October related to, is this injury related to the one that popped up in the report?
He has a stress injury, evolved over time, and he requires no surgery. I'm not asking or answering any more questions about it. We're playing the Rams in 2 days, if you guys haven't figured this out. So he's listed as questionable, and that's the way it is.
Will he make a full recovery?
Yes.
Do you know how long that recovery will take?
Don't want to put a timetable on it, but it could be 3 months, possibly.
If you decide before you leave that you're going to go with Nick, is it possible that you won't take Carson like the business back?
No, he's traveling.
If the injury does, is there a risk to putting him back out there? You mentioned he's questionable, which would theoretically give him a chance to play. Is there a risk in further injury if you put him out there?
If we put him out there, there has to be 100% that there's no risk of anything further.
So why wasn't that
So it's questionable.
But is there a risk why was that the standard then throughout the season? If this has evolved over time, then it means he's been playing with an injury over time. So why wasn't that the standard when the injury first came up? Are you following what I'm asking?
Yeah, you're asking when it happened.
No, but for something to evolve,
for something to evolve, it takes time. And when is that window? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
where is that window?
For something to evolve, it means it didn't happen this past week. Therefore, it's been evolving, like you said. So, from the time when it started evolving, why wasn't this identified then?
Because at the time, probably it wasn't identified as a stress injury or stress fracture, as you said.
Okay. So as you look at that from an organizational perspective, is there concern that you have him out there while this is getting worse?
No, because he was. There were no symptoms. He was 100%. He practiced. He was not on the injury report, for this. So, yeah, had no issue with that.
To the naked eye, it seemed like he was not running as much.
Well, I answered that earlier in the week. I answered this earlier in the week about the Dallas Cowboy D-line and how teams know Carson runs. Rush lanes change. Rush patterns change. Blitzes change to keep a guy like Carson Wentz in. Same as I think I even brought up Michael Vick. Teams would blitz and rush Michael Vick differently to keep him in the pocket. So you can't just say, well, he's not running more. Well, put some credit back on the defense and say, hey, they rush a little bit differently too.
As production throwing the ball down the field, the missing throws that typically he does make. I mean, did you guys see all this and think that maybe?
Well, we saw the missed throws, but we're not linking the two together. We just got to get better at making the throw.
On Monday, you said he's feeling as healthy as he's ever been. Was that your understanding when you got back from Dallas that there were no issues with himself?
Yeah.
So for Carson to be able to play on Sunday night, wouldn't he have to go through the same kinds of tests, possibly out in LA for that to happen? What was the feasibility of that?
Well, I mean, we're still gathering a lot of information, so the feasibility is probably pretty high.
When did you guys discover the fracture?
When? He had a test done on Tuesday.
And then the results came back on.
And then everything since that point. So everything's evolved up until Tuesday. Until you do a scan, you don't know.
You mentioned before that ankles connected to the leg. Is he compensating for the knee?
No.
Have they made anything?
No.
With the
something that's happened like regularly, or do you complain about some sort of discomfort?
We do a lot of testing each week on a lot of players. We've done Tim Jernigan. We do all our we've done Sidney Jones. We've done all the guys that have been injured. Avante Maddox. We do them all every week. And Carson's no different. He's been on the injury report from the beginning of the season for other reasons. And so we continue to monitor. And again, that's part of us gathering the information that we need to make sure the guys are ready to go.
You said at the beginning of the season that you're married to him for the next decade. This is his fourth injury of varying levels in 4 years, dating back to last year of college. So how concerned are you about that going forward?
I think it's a pretty, to ask the question now after 3 years and the injury, situation that's going on. I think you guys can sit here and say that it's probably a red flag. A lot of injuries occur because of the nature of the sport, the violent hits of this sport. Guys know exactly what they are getting into, even at a young age. And Carson's no different. But, moving forward, we just got to make sure that we do a better job of protecting him, starting with the offensive line, starting with the backs. He does his part by, getting the ball out of his hand. I do my part by maybe incorporating more screens and quick throws to help that. But it's not in any way going to change the aggressiveness of my nature or his moving forward.
So this is the first injury we've had guys one thing to another period of coverage, et cetera. Is you're comfortable with the training staff? Is that still at a certain level?
It's at a high level because of the communication that we have, myself, Howie, our docs, Jerome, Shireen, everybody involved. We've had a lot of really good conversations, a lot of good protocols put in place for every injured athlete that we've had this season.
As a follow-up,
Listen, that's a doctor question. I'm not getting into those. That's a medical. I'm not getting into that.
I recognize as I ask this that you're not on the bench.
Thank you for recognizing that.
But they're not up here, and Howie's not up here, so we ask you.
I'm the head football coach, and so I get the pleasure of coming up here. That's my job. That's what I have to do.
So as you look at the injuries this season, Carson among them, have you noticed a trend in injuries that have regressed or have gotten worse?
Specifically?
Darren Sproles, Tim Jernigan, Jalen Mills showed up in the walking boot a few weeks into the injury. Sidney Jones has re-injured himself 3 times in games this year. I understand it's a violent.
There's a fine line with guys that can return to play that have an injury, and there's a fine line of how far you want to push an athlete to test him to see where he's at physically through his protocol. And we have a protocol. Each athlete has their own, based on injury, has their own protocol, and we have to measure where he is. I don't know, stage 3, stage 4, however many stages there are in that protocol. And so for these athletes, one, for them internally, they want to get back out on the field. Sproles wants to get back out. Jalen wants to get back out. Tim wants to get back out, the guys you mentioned. So we're going to put them through a sort of our own internal tests, right? And so there's a fine line to how much we can push. And then sometimes within that pushing from, whether it's doctors, it could be, the trainer, the player himself, there could be setbacks because we're trying to see where the athlete is. And that happens. That happens with everybody in the National Football League. So that's kind of what's happened. But I don't think that we've had a setback or a step back at all with any of that.
2 more questions. I was the only person from the organization that is up here answering questions about the medical staff. One question that's never been answered is why were the top 2 doctors fired after you guys won the Super Bowl?
I'm not even going to comment on that either.
Doug, you've had a back fracture before. You know the nature of of
Mine was different.
I know it is. Back
Totally
then,
different.
That's where the questions go. And this is a stress fracture, which I've seen termed as a trickier form of a back fracture. Is that your understanding? What is your long-term concern when it comes to this?
The information is that it required, number one, no surgery, which is a positive. Mine didn't need surgery either, but mine was completely different. Mine was a transverse process that was broke off with some other damage back there. So 2 different injuries. And the fact that he doesn't need surgery on this, I mean, is the best news that you could possibly have on anybody that has a stress fracture or stress injury in this case.
But in terms of the long-term outlook, I mean, is there still a level of haste?
No.
Because of the trickiness that comes with, especially.
No. As long as we take the proper steps to make sure that all our players are 100%, then no.
Why not shut them down? Thank you.
All right. I'm out.
All right, so that was Eagles head coach Doug Peterson talking about Carson Wentz's fracture, and they're playing the Rams on Sunday, so that should be good. Allison Seymour is joining me in the newsroom.
I waited to come over in dramatic fashion as I drag my chair over with you.
Yeah, we're so happy to have her on. She's, you guys know, Allison from the morning show.
It's Friday.
It is. We're talking about some cool Christmas topics today.
We are?
Okay, so listen to this. I want to see your thought on this. Some people we're talking about a lot of Santa stories as of late. I don't know if you heard about this. Some are talking about did you guys talk about this morning? Okay, is it time to be a little more progressive on Santa and talk about him or her in a different fashion? So people are saying, and this is just a stock photo, but people are saying, should we, they did a poll in the UK and the US, 4,000 people, and talk about what kind of traits should Santa have. Should it not be sort of known as a male anymore? Should it be female or gender neutral? Should there be other kind of qualities? The results of the survey, and again, it's 4,000 people, so it's not a huge number, but people were saying, should he lose weight or have an iPhone? So a lot of different progressive things, right? But the trend is sort of to be progressive, to talk about gender neutral.
Well, here's what I will say about it. So in my house, our Santa Clauses reflect what we look like. So our Santas have brown skin.
That's awesome.
And so,
and they always did.
And they always,
when you were.
They always did. When I was a little girl, and my grandmother, who was born in 1916, she would always put a little bit of her makeup on the Santas because it was just always
that's cool.
What it was. And famously, Megyn Kelly said, Santa Claus is white, Jesus is white, blah 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 is And for us, it was just kind of like, no, in our house, Santa Claus was black. You know what I mean? And so therefore, I cannot be hypocritical and say that I wouldn't, if I saw a Santa who happened to be a female Santa. Santa is the spirit of it. You know what I mean? Santa is love and generosity and joy. That's what Santa represents. And so who am I to say, no, it's got to be a male, when in my house, he looks like me.
That's interesting. It goes into the whole thing of how do we depict Santa, and so they're asking, and it's a good question for you all too, if you were to rebrand Santa in modern society, would it be male, female, or gender neutral? I mean, it is the society that we're in right now, something to think about. So
it is. I mean, it
kind of
is.
interesting.
And I think that, well, I'll just say this, when Megyn Kelly happened to make that comment, it made me sad a little bit, because I'm like, wow, you have a figure that is real to so many people, and I'm not going to say that Santa is not real on this, because I know that I'm not going to say any of it. But what I will say is, has anybody seen Santa? They're
right.
You know what I mean? And it comes from different legends,
cultures,
and all that, right?
Kris Kringle, the whole thing.
That's all I'll say. So I just feel like I'm not going to make a comment that somebody else can receive and feel excluded from it, like I felt when I heard that comment from her.
Right.
Yeah.
I always thought it was cool, even as a little girl, to learn about the different cultures and how they depict Santa Claus or Kris Kringle or whatever it was. And it was different in every culture, across Europe, across here. So it's interesting. Some of the people are talking about during Christmas. And going into the weekend on a more serious note.
I do not think Santa should lose weight. I don't care.
You're like, that's his
who
thing.
Santa is, right.
That was one of the questions.
Santa live.
Should he go on a diet? I know that was a little bit much. That was a little much. Going into this weekend, though, on a more serious note, really exciting, really beautiful, actually, tradition is the Wreaths across America in Arlington Cemetery. Let me see if I can pull up a picture of this. They're still sort of petitioning. We had a story about this morning about, let me see if I can just play out the story in a second, but about what you need to know to kind of go and volunteer your time at 8 a.m. Eastern time in Arlington at the cemetery to place wreaths on. It's a really beautiful tradition. I've been able to do it once before. I don't know if you have some familiarity with it. Yeah, years ago, our university. It's really neat. It was a cold frost day, and our university kind of had an alumni gathering that did this. So many groups come together to do this, and actually, let's play out what you guys were talking about this morning.
Arlington Cemetery. And Bob, it's going to rain tomorrow. We know that. It will not be the prettiest day, but we've all been there before, and the volunteers just really, really come out and show.
Yeah, last year they had to cut it off at 90,000 people here at Arlington Cemetery to put out roughly 265,000 wreaths. It's quiet now here at the cemetery, but as you mentioned, it's going to be raining tomorrow, so it's going to be a mess, and a lot of people here to help start it off for us is Lieutenant Colonel Carl Sonderman with the U.S. Army and Arlington National Cemetery. Lieutenant Colonel, thanks for being here. What is there a message to people who maybe are just hearing about this and, oh, it's tomorrow, it's Saturday, and I don't mind the rain, I want to come out and help? You're going to have probably more people than you need, but what's the main advice for people who want to come here to Arlington Cemetery tomorrow and volunteer? And we can show the video of what people have done in the past years, walking through the cemetery, placing wreaths at every headstone.
We'd like to thank all of our volunteers that come out tomorrow, and we really do appreciate the support of coming here every December and honoring and remembering all of those that are interred here at Arlington National Cemetery. These are hallowed grounds, and we really would like our visitors and volunteers to understand and respect the grounds here. For information on volunteering tomorrow and coming to the cemetery, please visit our website, www.arlingtoncemetery.mil. That's where information can be found about the timeline, the entrances, how to get here to the cemetery, some of the routes. There will be road closures. We are also pushing mass transportation using Metro to come here because of the large numbers. We are expecting another large turnout of volunteers tomorrow, about 90,000 again, even with the weather. So please just come out, be patient with us. It's a lot of people here in the National Capital Region coming out, especially with the inclement weather. Prepare yourselves, look at our website, prepare for the weather, and we really look forward to seeing everybody out tomorrow morning.
And so you're saying, Carl, that there will be no parking here. You can't just drive here and park. Take Metro, park over at the Pentagon, walk in is basically how to do it, right?
Correct. All those options are on our website. So if you go to our website, you can see parking maps for parking near the Pentagon, or how to walk from the Metro stops. Of course, we have an Arlington Cemetery Metro stop, but we're also recommending that people get off at the Roslyn stop and at the Pentagon stop and walk to our other gates. So we have 4 gates here at the cemetery. So really just recommend people go onto our website and see all the different options that are out there. This Metro stop here at Arlington can get really busy.
Okay, so that's it, guys, and we'll have it on our website as well. It's right there on the homepage, fox5dc.com. Starts at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The wreaths are getting here later this afternoon, guys, and just be patient and be prepared for the bad weather.
So that was Bob this morning with Steve and Allison, who are now with me in the newsroom, about that event tomorrow. But unfortunately, it is going to rain here. It's a bummer.
Rain, but that won't stop it.
Yeah.
That will not stop it at all. And so.
It's really nice. I was able to go a couple years ago. Like I said, it was freezing. Oh, there's another one, Steve. But unfortunately, it's somewhere. It might be hanging out there, Steve.
Technical
difficulties. We'll find one. He'll share one. Yeah, and anyway, it's a beautiful thing to go to, and I think they're going to be, I think it's going to be busy. Like you said, you have to kind of metro in. It's crazy.
It's an awesome way to spend a part of your weekend. Helping others in your memory.
Have you ever been to?
You know what's crazy is that they have so many volunteers that come down to that with all of the graves at Arlington National Cemetery, it works out to only 3 wreaths per person. Like that's how
that's all they don't even need, right?
I mean, that's how many people are happy to volunteer. Is that you know, obviously there's a huge need for it, but they get so many volunteers. It really just comes down to each volunteer, or you know, if each volunteer had 3 wreaths, they could cover the entire cemetery.
Yeah, I think there are some cool rules too to respect the culture of like various vets' religions and whatnot. If there's a Star of David, a Jewish star, they don't do it, and there's like a whole thing, right, to kind of respect that.
Oh, you know, that's very interesting. That is very interesting.
So yeah.
Well, yeah, I guess the wreath is really tied to Christmas. I was going to say,
I know, I was wondering that too.
Religion free, it's just like a wreath.
I was thinking it was just about being a vet, but I wasn't sure.
No, that's
But
very cool,
there are
very
definitely markers on each stone as to what the religious preference was of that person who was interred there.
Oh, yeah. It's heartwarming to see everybody come out.
Yeah.
And do their part. So
totally.
Little rain won't stop it.
No, it won't.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I'm not gonna make it because I'm out of town, but I wish I could have. So.
Just a heads up, and I said this earlier on the show, if you're not going down, the traffic on the Parkway gets backed up so much because it's you know, like Bob pointed out, it's 90,000 people. That's more than a stadium full of people for a huge football game or event, all going to be trying to get through on one road. So if you're trying to get to the airport to Reagan National for a flight, just a heads up.
Oh my gosh.
So
What's
much
Memorial Bridge doing this weekend?
Oh,
I think it's open, but with delays. You know, I mean, one direction.
Speaking of football, did you guys see the ESPN released this like cleanliness of the foods in all the stadiums?
Yeah, we were just talking about that.
You were?
We didn't do so well here in DC.
Well, it was middle of the road, I thought. Like the Nats and FedEx were sort of in the 40 percentile range, 40, 50.
Okay.
I don't know. Some of the worst were Denver.
We're average or slightly less than
average or less than average. Denver.
Some mold in the water.
It was for like how clean like the beer might be that you're drinking or the food. Yeah, weirdly, like Coors Field and Mile High in Denver were some of the worst, and some of the ones that you would think would be clean. So it's an interesting report. ESPN just put it out. So
this wasn't like quality of food, like the best. You're going to get the best hot dog.
Oh no, it was. Are your beer lines cleaned? Are there food violations? So
nasty.
Yeah. So I don't know.
People are still going to go. Just the more you know, I suppose.
Yeah, some of the worst. I think the number one. Actually, the cleanest one was Golden State Warriors, Oracle Arena, I guess, in Oakland. And, yeah.
Cute little doggy over there.
Where?
On the Fox 5 Twitter page.
Oh, yeah. What is it for?
Golden Retriever. What is that?
I don't know. Let's bring it up.
Is that a golden?
Isn't it?
A graduation ceremony. Oh, wait, I don't have it over here.
That is not a dachshund.
Oh, it looks like a dachshund to me.
Looks like a golden to me.
It is a graduation ceremony for future service dogs.
Aww,
I can't seem to bring it up because I'm not logged in. But, sorry.
Well, congratulations. I wonder if they have dachshunds as service dogs.
I don't think so. But they could. They could do it.
Comfort dogs.
What are you guys up to this weekend?
Oh, my goodness.
Are any big plans
Well, I
for
finally got a
Christmas?
Christmas tree yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Because I knew it was going to be raining because my weather guy, Tucker Barnes, told me so.
Ask her where it is right now.
This weather.
It's in the netting on the floor when I left this morning. How it came off the top of the car. It's not up yet. But it will.
Did you get it off the top of the car yourself?
At least you got the real one. That's so nice. Oh, your husband did it?
We went yesterday, and we never have like tip money when we do that because we always I always.
What is it? Is that the protocol now? Like I don't even know.
Well, if somebody if anybody
they cut it, put it on it for you.
Yeah, exactly. They do all the work.
Mm-hmm. So.
Does it smell nice? Do you like it?
Smells good.
You picked a good one?
Yeah, I picked a good one. And where I get it, it was like cheaper this year. Because did you say that like trees, more Americans aren't doing the trees?
Yeah, something like 70% of homes now have artificial trees.
My parents became that. I was so mad when we were like teenagers.
Oh, well, yeah.
Or 20.
Because you get to a point that you're just like, you know what? I'm not doing this.
And like the animals get in it.
Yeah, I'm not doing it.
We grew up in the woods, so it was easy.
You chop one.
Cut one down.
That's so
Sadly,
nice.
They were never pine trees, and that was an issue.
We did have pine trees, but they were like 150 feet high, so that we let them stay in nature. But we did go to Christmas tree farms.
That's really nice. We didn't really do that either.
We got our trees as we always had a real tree. But
Right.
then we would always go to. I spent like every Christmas of my life in South Carolina instead.
Oh.
So my grandparents, they had a fake tree. I don't think that generation, they were like,
Is that right?
real tree. Yeah, they had they had an artificial tree, and we loved it. So yeah.
Oh, that's so nice though. So then you'll decorate it this weekend.
Yeah, we'll do it this weekend. It's going to be raining, so
Mhm.
we've got stuff to do, but the house will be decorated
Good.
next time I step foot into this building.
We always had one real tree growing up and then one artificial that smelled like your grandfather's tree. It actually smelled like the box that it was stored in for probably 30 years.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And it was not one of the fancy ones. And you know what it was? You know now like they come in, like there's like a low part, a middle part, a high part, whatever.
And they
just,
put it together.
attach it together. Like this was literally a pole with holes in it, and you had to stick the branches, the fake branches, into the pole in the middle of it. And it looked like a
Was
pole
it
with
pre-lit?
fake branches.
My
looking out of it.
issue,
No, it was not pre-lit.
because
That's
I'm
why
not
you
an
had to try to dress
artificial
it up with lighting.
person, artificial tree person,
Mhm.
or artificial person. That do the lights go out? Like, do you have to replace the lights?
Well, on a
Here and there, I think.
Yeah, I know it's pre-lit. So the first year, but suppose it goes out, then you have to take all the ones that came with the tree.
I think they're not like forever, right?
Right?
I
Mine's on
assume.
its second year and it's fine.
Oh, it is? Do you have your mini one up?
Yeah, but the mini one.
Oh, good. Is it nice?
Yeah, it's pretty. It's pre-lit.
Is it green?
It's like, is the tree green?
Yeah, because you know some people
Yes,
are
I
doing.
decided to get a Christmas tree.
And some people are doing
Pause.
white, black, and red
Pause
this
it.
year.
Pause it, smart elegance.
Right.
Didn't I get you a tree one year and was a color?
It was like silver.
That was not a dumb question because a lot of people are doing monochrome. A lot of
But
people.
I will say this: if my tree is a mini tree that I use now, which is about four feet high.
Yeah.
But it's on a platform, so it looks a little taller.
I'm only 5 feet tall.
Well, you
Oh,
got
really?
me a micro
5'2".
tree.
Yeah, it was
like,
just a little.
like, little thing, like
It was just a little
Like a
tree
foot?
for your house.
It was
because
cute. I used
you weren't
it.
doing a tree.
And honestly, it was the only tree that I used
So,
for probably like 2 years.
Let's be honest. He's so insensitive.
Okay, thank you, Tucker.
Let's be honest.
Right.
You really need to work on your sensitivity.
Who gets you the best kiss every year?
Steve. Anywho, go ahead. I'm sorry.
But now yours is the mini, like the Charlie Brown style, the mini.
No,
no, that's the one that Al got me.
Yeah, this
Oh,
is just
I
a
love
joke
that.
because
Yeah.
he didn't,
I wasn't
The
celebrating
Bachelor.
Christmas.
Yeah.
And I
It's
wanted
like, I'm not
to
putting
give him a
anything
little
up.
tree.
So
Right.
Al stepped up and she got me something.
Very
I used it for a couple
sweet.
years.
Thank you.
But now
And it was not.
I've upgraded to a 4-foot tree now.
Oh, like the medium size. I like that.
I think 2 years ago I had a real mini one, like 4 or 5 feet.
It just
But
smells
they were
so
like $30
good.
bucks. It wasn't
So
that bad.
nice. Yeah. And you have to water it and stuff. You
And
have to keep
and
it.
fit in the back of my
Excuse
car.
me, I just got an
Yeah.
8-foot tree for $55.
Yeah, I got mine for 30, which is cheaper.
Hers.
Yours was this tall.
Hers for the size.
Thank you, Mom.
Right?
Molly, do you think? What are you doing Monday?
Do you think
at 6
small
a.m.?
dogs are less expensive than big dogs?
Can I jump in with Al instead?
None of it
I'm
does.
saying, you paid $30
You
for
got a better rate per foot than I did.
Right.
Yeah.
Somewhere, next year. Check with me first, and I'll.
No, I'm saying that there's a premium on the little ones.
Oh.
Because to get like,
Because
the
they're
perfectly
niche
shaped-
and different,
Plus-
maybe.
plus- and I'm not trying to sound tragic to the trees out there that have feelings, but it didn't get to grow up big and strong like yours did.
True.
Well, can I say this though about it? It does seem a little wasteful that we have live trees, isn't it? Like all of them go to like if you don't use it, like what happens to all those trees that don't get picked?
Most of them come from farms.
Would they still be in the
Somebody's
wild?
business. They grow them.
Just to cut them down?
There's a tree farm
Maybe.
here where I grew up, but the thing is,
It's kind of like cows
they
for slaughter.
literally-
They grow them for that.
Well,
I know.
except that these trees take like years and years to grow to the size that you.
Right.
So you go through like a tree farm and they have like various levels as you look at it, like ones that are this big, ones that are this big, ones that are larger. But it's just like every year they'll like be like, okay, it's like I guess grapes or whatever, like wine, like okay, that
Certain
part's ready.
time.
Let's
But what do
sell
they
these.
do with the trees that don't sell? Is my question.
I don't know. That's a good question.
What do they do with all those trees?
Because they already chopped. They make them into something.
Oh no!
Maybe wreaths.
Maybe they spin them for whatever wreaths.
Maybe pine scented candles.
I do love the
Maybe so, I
pine.
hope so. I
So
will do some
nice.
research after this.
Yeah. So that's your weekend. All right.
Yeah, that's my weekend. I'm decorating.
It's a good weekend for it if it's going to rain all weekend.
Yeah, bummer about the weather.
How about
So
you? You said you.
yeah, I'm traveling out of town. Yeah, so getting
I'll
out.
hold down the fort in the DMV.
All right, we'll catch you guys in the morning next week then.
I'll be here. Will you be here Monday? What? Well, this is an outrage, Mom.
We'll see you Tuesday.
I'm going to go over here and cry. So I'll see you later.
Well, I appreciate it. That's actually a huge compliment.
I know. We're going to miss him at 6, right?
Yeah. What are you doing at 6?
I am not here Monday either, but I will be Tuesday.
Okay.
All right. So we'll see you all Tuesday. Thanks for joining me today. Enjoy your sunflower seeds.
Thank you. And I was trying to do it on the down low.
I know.
Bomb threat emails have been sent to businesses and individuals in Sacramento City and County, Stockton, Rockland, San Joaquin County, El Dorado County, Placerville, and Vacaville. The email is asking for $20,000 in bitcoins, threatening that there is an explosive inside the building where you work, suggesting that if the sum is not paid, that bomb will be detonated. Police across the country are warning people not to pay the ransom. None of these threats have been found to be credible. In Sacramento County, the Sheriff's Department says they've had 4 reports. In the city of Sacramento, the police department says it has gotten around a dozen reports. Some examples of businesses which have gotten the email here locally include a church, an apartment leasing office, and a printing shop. Many of those places did evacuate as a precaution. Even though police believe this is a hoax, they are still checking those places just to be safe.
We are making contact with the business owners just to make sure that there's not that extra level or there's not something that we're missing. And it also allows us to educate them on, what to do if this ever does happen and it is something real. But we are encouraging folks to utilize any protocols that their businesses may have in place at this point, just to make sure that, they follow those and they contact law enforcement, make sure we're aware, because it is important that we get all the facts and get all the information when these instances do occur.
Rising from the rubble that now blankets the Skyway Villas mobile home park in Paradise.
I kind of adopted him, He's almost like a son.
A newfound connection between these two neighbors.
I got up, I looked out the window, and it literally reminded me of like an apocalypse movie.
Dominic Roundtree watched the fire come toward his mobile home park. But instead of fleeing to safety, Dominic packed his service dog.
Oh yeah, that's my best friend.
Before heading next door to check on his neighbors.
Yeah, that was my first thought, was I gotta get everybody out of here. After my dog was in the truck with everything.
Larry was inside his trailer with his dog when he realized he had to evacuate.
I needed help because I'm on crutches. I can't lift a lot of stuff. So Dom volunteered to help me get all my stuff together.
Larry asked me if I could help him, and I was running over there, just packing up his stuff, making sure we get out.
With his service dog safe by his side, he credits his neighbors for helping him make it out the fire.
Yeah, if it wasn't for Des, David, and Larry, and Garland, I don't know where I'd be right now. I probably would still be in that fire.
Along with the support from the LGBTQ community, Dominic is trans. The formerly homeless man now feels like he's found a new family.
It's nice to know that he basically said, I understand how you feel. You have a band of trans brothers behind you.
Dominic and Larry say they'll continue looking out for each other long after tragedy.
Make a connection. We'll always be connected till the day I die.
Reporting in Paradise, Charmaine Nero, Fox 40 News.
Filed late Wednesday night, the order from federal judge Emmett Sullivan gives special counsel Robert Mueller's team less than 48 hours to provide all records and underlying notes from the FBI's January 2017 interview of former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn in the White House Situation Room. In court papers this week, Flynn's attorneys claimed then FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, later fired for lying to federal investigators over media leaks, called Flynn at short notice, then sent two agents, including Peter Strzok, who sent anti-Trump texts to conduct Flynn's Russia interview. The filing also claims McCabe discouraged Flynn from having a lawyer present, and the agents did not warn Flynn that any false statements could be prosecuted. By contrast, Flynn's legal team said other witnesses were warned of the probe's serious nature. Over the weekend, Comey said he was directly involved because he believed Flynn's statements about his Russia contacts to the vice president conflicted with FBI evidence.
I sent them. Something I probably wouldn't have done or maybe gotten away with in a more organized investigation, a more organized administration, in the George W. Bush administration, for example, or the Obama administration.
Adding to the mystery, last year, Comey and McCabe told Republican House investigators that the FBI agents reported no signs of deception from the Flynn interview. Despite the guilty plea, the president, who rarely comments about Flynn, told Fox he believes his former aide was pressured.
They convinced him he did lie, and he made some kind of a deal. And now they're recommending no time. You know why? Because they're embarrassed that they got caught.
Judge Sullivan has a track record for calling out prosecutorial misconduct. His order puts the special counsel and Flynn's legal team on a tight timeline. The sentencing is scheduled for Tuesday. In Washington, Catherine Herridge, Fox News. Judge Sullivan has a track record.
Have you gotten your flu shot yet? If the answer is no, don't feel too badly about it. You're not alone. More than 40% of Americans have not been vaccinated against the flu, and they say, you know what? I don't plan on getting the shot. Despite the warnings, the potential dangers, and last year's record number of flu-related deaths. The survey was done by the National Opinion Research Center at the University of Chicago. Now, people under the age of 45 were the ones who are least likely to get vaccinated. Here are the top 3 reasons why. Side effects. Some think the shot side effects are worse than the flu, but usually it's just a sore arm. People still think they're going to get the flu from the flu shot. The flu vaccine is inactive. It cannot cause infection. The virus is inactive. And 31% say, I don't think it works. Well, It doesn't work every time. It doesn't cover every strain, but the numbers say if you get the flu shot, you are 60% less likely to need treatment for the flu. Remember, last year's flu season was a rough one. Record-breaking 900,000 people went to the hospital. 80,000 people died in the United States. Most of the deaths were in adults older than 65. The flu also killed 180 children and teenagers last year. So it was a rough flu season. It really kicked in January and February and continued into March. So it is not too late to get your flu shot. With your Fox News medical team, I'm Dina Santafanti.
President Trump has tried to maintain a strong relationship with the Saudi royal family following the murder of a Washington Post columnist. Now the Senate has not only condemned the Crown Prince, it voted to pull out of military efforts in Yemen. A co-sponsored bill by Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders and Utah Republican Mike Lee passing 56-41. It calls for the U.S. to end military assistance in the Saudi-led effort to oust rebels in Yemen and demands for an immediate ceasefire.
We will not continue to have our military posture dictated by a despotic, murderous regime in Saudi Arabia.
A second resolution passed overwhelmingly by voice vote, placing blame for the death of Jamal Khashoggi on the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman.
The killing of Khashoggi is something that we just cannot let go. It's absolutely abhorrent.
The president has walked a fine line on Khashoggi's killing, but maintains the relationship with Saudi Arabia is too important to damage. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell echoing that sentiment.
We also want to preserve this 70-year partnership, which serves our interests and helps stabilize a crucial region.
I think the president's dead right about the strategic relationship being meaningful. I just believe that the relationship, while valuable in the past, has become too much of a burden.
The resolution comes after members of the House were given a classified briefing on Khashoggi's killing by the Defense Secretary and the Secretary of State. Senators were briefed last month. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
U.S. relations with Saudi Arabia still up in the air amid the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi and the Saudi-led war in Yemen. The Senate voting to open a debate on whether the U.S. should stop arms sales and impose sanctions in the country.
Our legislation doesn't say it's the end for our relationship with Saudi Arabia. That's not what we're saying. But we are saying that Saudi Arabia has to change. That's our motivation. I don't know what the president says.
Okay. President Trump continuing to defend the Crown Prince despite a CIA assessment that he likely ordered Khashoggi's murder. Members of the administration are backing him up, saying a good relationship with the Saudi kingdom is imperative.
America has an important ally in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. They work with us on issues that provide security for America and for Israel. It is an important relationship.
On the flip side, some ardent Trump supporters are voicing their dissent, including Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina.
This country, led by the de facto leader as the Crown Prince, has been a wrecking ball. And the Khashoggi incident is just one of many, but the most egregious.
Thursday, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Defense Secretary Jim Mattis will brief the House of Representatives on Khashoggi's killing. That briefing could bring forward new information. In Washington, Ray Bogan, Fox News.
Watching the UC Davis commencement band, it's hard not to notice something different about their trumpet player, Michael O'Hearn. After all, he's 3 times the age of most of his bandmates, and he plays from a wheelchair. But ask Michael, he'll tell you he's just as youthful and wide-eyed about his future in music as anyone else in the ensemble.
You know, in life, you learn different things. You hear stories of people that are older that say, hey, I want to do something. I want to fulfill this dream. I found the chance to do something I've always wanted to do.
Michael's been playing trumpet since the 7th grade. After high school, he thought he could make a career out of it. Eventually, he put music aside and entered the workforce as a salesman. That is, until he started having trouble walking.
So I started using a cane. Then it declined, got worse. When I started getting into my 50s, I started to eventually use a wheelchair.
Michael suffers from adrenoleukodystrophy, a rare genetic disease that affects his muscle control and motor skills. Wheelchair-bound, he couldn't work the same way, but the disease did give him time to rediscover his passion. His old trumpet, and in 2014, enrolled in a music degree program at UC Davis. While his disease was debilitating, Michael says there was something healing about being around younger musicians.
I even feel younger. I don't feel different. You know, I feel better. I feel a part of things.
This Saturday, after 4 years of rediscovering who he is, Michael, the trumpet player, will get his diploma. But typical Mike, he has no intention of using his wheelchair to get across the stage.
My intent to walk to receive my diploma isn't just physical. I want to show people that I've done something.
With the help of bandmates, he'll be walking to his diploma, determined, one step at a time.
You know, it's a fight. You know, when I was younger, I never thought of this type of life. Never thought this would happen to myself. I don't want it to hold me down. I don't want it to hold me back. You know, I want to play. I want to be a musician. I want to be active. Being in a wheelchair, I don't want that to be a different factor.
And he hasn't let it, ending this journey on his own terms and on a high note.
Somber, sad, yet grateful, a bittersweet moment for the family of KJ Gross, the brave little 12-year-old who lost his battle with cancer in May. His mother, who quit work to care for her sick son, had been unable to afford a headstone. His grave at Elmwood Cemetery remained unmarked until now.
I know exactly where he is. This is my first time coming back since we buried him here.
It's all possible because of KJ's best friend Caleb and his Christmas wish.
I'm trying to raise money for his headstone.
Last week, we told you about his efforts to purchase a headstone so KJ's mom could visit her son at Christmas. Caleb was doing odd jobs and fundraising so he could pay for his best friend's grave marker. The story spread, and this tale of boyhood friendship caught the attention of David Techner, funeral director and the owner of Ira Kaufman Chapel. Techner and his wife lost their own daughter nearly 42 years ago.
It just touched me, and the fact that Caleb was willing to do what he did, just, you know, it's just such a great gesture and such an act of love.
Techner contacted his friend at Monument Center, and Mike Daniels got to work right away to help make Caleb's wish come true.
So it's a selfless act, selfless story, and you just want to be part of something. It's a time of the year to definitely be giving.
KJ's family deciding on a youthful font and an angel that represents both boys, and KJ's heart that lives on. Even though Caleb couldn't be here on this day with KJ's loved ones, they say he will always be part of their family.
I love Caleb. He just don't know how he's blessed our family because they are kindred hearts. Their spirits are the same. And I believe that my son now lives through Caleb.
Two boys with a bond that transcends even death, a friendship she hopes will inspire others in these trying times.
There's so much anger and hatred going on, and I hope the world can see that if, you know, two 12-year-old boys can connect like this, and that, you know, we can get over some of this hatred and some of the division, and I hope this helps.
In Detroit, Amy Lang, Fox 2 News.
There's a line of children waiting to see Santa Claus.
What do you want for Christmas?
I want a truck one.
But what if you've never seen Santa?
Went over there and I whispered real quick. I said, he's blind and autistic, but very interested in Santa. He said, say no more.
Misty Wolf took 6-year-old Matthew to see Santa at Cabela's. Her husband's photos reveal a trust from Matthew they usually only see at home.
All children need is love.
It was the thread that wove reality with imagination.
He felt Santa's suit, and Santa said, pull my beard. He said, fill my hat.
He's never seen a reindeer. He's never seen a picture of a reindeer. So the thing is, let him feel one, and we have them right here.
'Twas the night before Christmas went all through the house.
One of Matthew's favorite books is The Night Before Christmas. He took the chance to touch the twinkle in Santa's eyes.
It never occurred to me, but I guess Matthew didn't really know what a twinkle was, so he wanted to know what eyes that twinkle were.
Matthew's curiosity was sparked a few weeks ago when he came across a figure of Santa Claus in a store.
The radio played Silent Night, and I said, "This song is about baby Jesus." And he said, after a few minutes of silence, he says, "Is it Santa's birthday or Jesus' birthday?"
That day, Matthew only asked Santa for water.
He's not like all the other kids that, want a bunch of toys. He's just not into that. He'd rather have that experience and actually find out what Santa is.
Legislators need to pass 7 spending bills to keep the government open past next Friday. But right now, that's a tall hill to climb. There have been few negotiations, and both sides are dug in on their positions.
I want to be crystal clear. There will be no additional appropriations to pay for the border wall. It's done.
Democrats say they've given President Trump 2 options to fund the government, but the president says he won't accept unless those offers include more money for border security. President Trump wants $5 billion for border security. Democrats won't give more than $1.3 billion.
We have Homeland Security for a reason. Again, $5 billion can be well spent. They voted for $25 billion this year. Not to agree to $5 billion is just being stubborn, and I just don't want to help Trump.
It was the topic of debate on the House floor today, pitting the current majority leader with the Democrat who is taking his place next year.
You know what the solution is? Sit down with us and come to a compromise. Not that it's your way or no way.
These are bills that are your bills that we compromised on, and we are prepared to vote for 99%. 99%.
But it ended with a sign of peace.
It's a little candy. Might sweeten the spirit, and you might even be more than like to work with us to solve the problem, and I yield back and Merry Christmas.
I thank the majority leader.
Congress has until December 21st to reach a deal, but the House doesn't meet again until Wednesday the 19th, giving them just 2 days to agree on a plan. In Washington, Ray Bogan, Fox News.
But when the House gets back to work next week on Wednesday, they'll have less than 3 days to figure this out. The money spigot here in Washington is about to get shut off, at least partially. And it all comes down to, by Washington standards, a relatively small amount of money, $5 billion to build additional walls along the southern border. And from the president, a plea to work together, saying on Twitter, "Let's not do a shutdown, Democrats. Do what's right for the American people." But he also included a video that didn't exactly calm the waters.
The Democrats are absolute hypocrites. All along, they've been supporting walls and supporting fences and supporting all sorts of border security.
In Congress, the debate has been intense.
Shutting down the government is stupid.
Sit down with us and come to a compromise. Not that it's your way or no way.
But soon after that, the House left town, and Democrats in the Senate are drawing a line.
I want to be crystal clear. There will be no additional appropriations to pay for the border wall. It's done.
Much of this will come down to public perception, and a new Fox News poll shows that neither side in Congress is exactly riding a wave of popularity. The Democratic and Republican leaders are all underwater, bracing for the blistering battle ahead. So will this become an extended debate through Christmas? Maybe. All House members have been warned that the schedule is subject to change. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
I'm shocked. I'm surprised. You never think that things are going to happen that close to home.
No, it's quite surprising because it's a national epidemic. It's been something that's been all over this country.
A sample of water from the Adam farm was found tainted with the strain of E. coli, which has sickened 59 people across the U.S. thus far. The lettuce from the farm is now under a recall. The Adam Brothers farm is co-owned by County Supervisor Peter Adam. The farm is a multi-generational farm in the community, and though the FDA has identified them as one of the sources of the outbreak, one resident says he still has faith in their farming.
I mean, I think there should still be confidence in the product that they put out because they're a long-standing family, farming family in town.
Federal agents believe the Adam farm is not the only source of the contamination. The Food and Drug Administration continues to check other regions growing romaine lettuce to find other sources of the E. coli outbreak. Government agencies warn consumers to avoid any romaine lettuce grown in Santa Barbara and San Benito counties, as well as Monterey. However, they do say anything grown after November 23rd should be safe to eat.
President Trump broke his self-imposed silence yesterday on the Cohen sentencing on Twitter, and in an interview with Harris Faulkner today, the president insisting he did nothing wrong.
Let me tell you, I never directed him to do anything wrong. Whatever he did on his own. He's a lawyer. A lawyer who represents a client is supposed to do the right thing. That's why you pay them a lot of money, et cetera, et cetera.
President Trump also said that the payments made to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal were not illegal, despite what the Southern District of New York prosecutors said, or what Michael Cohen pleaded guilty to, or what media company AMI admitted it did.
If it were even a campaign contribution, it's totally legal. You look at stories one after another, they're all legal. The great lawyers that do that stuff are saying There's nothing illegal.
The president does get backup from a former member of the Federal Election Commission. In an op-ed in the Heritage Foundation's Daily Signal, Hans von Spakovsky wrote that the payments were a private transaction, not subject to campaign finance laws.
That had nothing to do with the campaign, weren't dependent on the campaign, and therefore there was no violation of federal law when these payments were made.
Spakovsky's argument centers on a statute that states campaign expenses do not include payments used to fulfill any commitment, obligation, or expense of a person that would exist irrespective of the candidate's election campaign. In other words, Spakovsky claims Daniels and McDougal likely would have come forward regardless of whether Donald Trump was running for president.
The whole question comes down to whether hush money payments made to these women, whether that's a campaign-related expense as opposed to a personal expense. And it's very clear from prior actions of the Justice Department and the Federal Election Commission that this is not a campaign-related expense.
President Trump told Fox News Cohen only pled guilty because prosecutors were trying to embarrass him.
What he did is he made a deal to embarrass me. In order to embarrass me, they cut his term down. Pretty terrible stuff.
And he played down Cohen's significance in the Trump organization, saying he only hired Cohen after Cohen supported his bid to build Trump World Tower in New York at a condominium committee meeting.
He did very low-level work.
Why did
he
you
did
need
more
him?
public relations than he did law. He was on a committee, and he was so responsive and so good. And I said, he's a nice guy. I shouldn't have done it.
And there may be another investigation looming. The Wall Street Journal reports today that federal prosecutors in New York City are looking into possible misspending by the Trump Inaugural Committee. According to the Journal, prosecutors also want to know if big donors were looking to buy influence with the incoming administration. The press secretary, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, said if there is such an investigation, it has nothing to do with the president. At the White House, John Roberts, Fox News.
In the hustle and bustle of life, hundreds said they had to stop.
They didn't say anything really. They just came in and said that they were going to have somebody who was very special.
Others couldn't help but stare.
Excited.
You're excited?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anticipation ahead of a big surprise. You see, the kids at Children's Hospital have no idea.
I think it's Michelle Obama.
That is, if their parents don't give it away. The secret revealed.
Anybody who's brave enough to show me orange justice.
Okay. And some moments are better shown, not said.
Let me try that. All right, Santa.
If you could tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Don't let fear guide you.
It was insane. I've looked up to her ever since I was really little.
Mrs. Obama has young fans and older ones too.
Just meeting somebody who's so influential in the world, I think is just really amazing.
This guy, the first in line at the local bookstore to get a signed copy of Michelle Obama's new book.
It's like a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and we haven't had a first lady like her. And that's awesome.
They call these happy tears, joyful waterworks. Worth your time.
Oh. I will do it 5 times over. It's awesome.
There was a line running up and down the bookstore and back at the hospital, what looks like a parade outside. You see, life was put on hold for just a moment as the former First Lady made her way around Colorado.
A brazen burglary caught on camera as 3 thieves smashed through the front of this Chevron gas station on Folsom Boulevard. Just after 4 o'clock this morning, you can see the driver of a red pickup truck ram into the glass storefront. Surveillance video shows one man in a ski mask push his way through the glass to get into the mini-mart and then strap some sort of cable or tie-down around the ATM. Just moments later, the driver punches the gas and the ATM jolts through what's left of the glass. Another camera pointed toward the parking lot shows 3 men loading the machine into the bed of the truck before speeding off. All of this happened in about a minute, but it caused extensive damage to the store entrance. Hours after the thieves took off with the ATM, there's still plenty of evidence of the crime that happened here. You can see glass scattered around the pavement, bricks falling off the front of the building, and part of the ATM still laying on the sidewalk. As the store owner starts the process of cleaning up the mess, sheriff's detectives are in the early stages of their investigation. They believe this wasn't the burglars' first stop.
They did do this at another location here in Rancho Cordova also this morning, but were unsuccessful in actually getting the ATM machine out.
Officials say crimes like this don't happen very often in Rancho Cordova, and they're asking anyone who might know something about the bold thieves to get in touch with them.
We might be looking for a stolen vehicle or someone who may have been driving a vehicle that matches this description with some damage to the front or rear end.
In Rancho Cordova, Olivia DeJaneiro, Fox 40 News.
As President Trump moved to end the Iran nuclear deal and reimpose sanctions, hackers said to have ties to Iran allegedly tried to break into the personal emails of American officials responsible for enforcing those sanctions. That, according to an exclusive report by the Associated Press. The U.S. government has focused on Iran and cyber activity for decades, but experts say this recent hacking attempt could be an escalation of a long-standing problem.
It's hard to put this in context without knowing what their end motivation is. Is it espionage, which they have a long history of doing, or is it in this second category of using cyber to conduct destructive attacks?
Andrew Grotto's email was reportedly one of the targets. He worked as the senior director for cybersecurity policy under both President Obama and President Trump. The hackers are said to be part of a group known as Charming Kitten.
They're known for being a little sloppy and a little loud.
One of the group's hit list reportedly became public after the hackers accidentally left a server open to the internet. A London-based cybersecurity firm extracted a list of 77 addresses and turned them over to the AP. The AP says the list includes private accounts of high-profile defenders, detractors, and enforcers of the nuclear deal struck between Washington and Tehran, and more than a dozen U.S. Treasury officials. The Department of Treasury wouldn't get into specifics here, but a spokesperson told Fox News Homeland Security issued an alert on November 1st to private industries related to the Iranian sanctions. And the spokesperson says by default, that security alert applied to federal agencies, including the Department of Treasury. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Allison Barber, Fox News. The Trump administration's new Africa strategy is called Prosper Africa. Administration officials say it's a direct rebuke of President Trump's critics who allege he's ignored the continent and point to disparaging comments he's made about African countries. First up on the agenda, countering the booming economic and political influence of two U.S. competitors in the region, China and Russia. Bolton roundly condemned China's trade and investment practices in Africa, labeling them predatory.
China uses bribes, opaque agreements, and the strategic use of debt to hold states in Africa captive to Beijing's wishes and demands. Its investment ventures are riddled with corruption and do not meet the same environmental or ethical standards as U.S. developmental programs.
He said both countries flout international laws in order to curry favor with Africa's elites, but he reserved his harshest critique for the Putin regime.
It continues to sell arms and energy in exchange for votes at the United Nations, votes that keep strong men in power, undermine peace and security, and run counter to the best interest of the African people.
National security officials tell Fox News President Trump's vision is a two-way street. He wants to push African leaders to start choosing U.S. investment over Russian and Chinese deals. But he also wants the U.S. private sector to choose Africa. And as with all Trump initiatives, America First is front and center.
All U.S. aid on the continent will advance U.S. interests.
Policy experts say it's a dramatic departure.
It was really the hallmark of the Obama administration to talk about African solutions to African problems. And the African Union was a big part of that. And Ambassador Bolton really didn't emphasize that at all.
But U.S. aid to Africa isn't drying up. Earlier this week, Secretary Pompeo committed $550 million to Senegal, one of West Africa's fastest-growing economies, a move the administration says is a continuation of Bush and Obama administration policies. In Washington, Jillian Turner, Fox News.
Google will be shutting down its failed social network, Google Plus, earlier than planned. The reason? The company says a security bug led to a massive leak of some 52 million users' private data. The information breach allowed outside developers to get information about users, including name, email, and age, even if the profile was set to private. On the Plus side, no financial information was released, and so far Google says they haven't seen any evidence that would indicate the information was used illegally. This is actually the second data breach for Google+. Back in October, the company said some 500,000 users' data was compromised. At that time, Google said they'd shutter the social site in August of 2019. Now, they've moved that date to April. The bad news came just a day before Google's CEO testified on Capitol Hill, defending the tech giant's record on personal privacy.
Protecting the privacy and security of our users has long been an essential part of our mission. We've invested an enormous amount of work over the years to bring choice, transparency, and control to our users.
Google Plus was launched back in 2011 as an alternative to the more dominant Facebook, but it never caught on with users. In New York, I'm Brett Larson, Fox News.
This isn't very creative. This is just political BS.
Consumer watchdog's leader Jamie Court fired.
Thank you all for being here with us today. Secretary Mattis and I are very pleased to welcome our Canadian counterparts, for Minister Chrystia Freeland and Minister of Defense Harjit Sajjan to Washington. Welcome. It was a great day. And indeed, it was my honor to host this State Department 2+2 strategic dialogue. And it's a great opportunity for us to have gotten some serious work done. But it's also a discussion amongst friends. The four of us have gotten to know each other quite well, and we've achieved a lot together. Our meeting today comes after the historic signing of the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, which was a tremendous victory for all three countries. I want to especially thank Minister Freeland for her efforts to make this happen. Look, the final deal is a home run. It modernizes NAFTA to address 21st century issues, 21st century economy, open trade and business, opportunities for United States farmers and manufacturers, reduce trade barriers amongst the three countries. In today's meeting, the four of us discuss how we can continue to build off of this. Take this achievement and make progress on a worldwide range of bilateral and global issues. On the bilateral front, we discussed our joint efforts to ensure North America is vigorously protected by both our militaries in close cooperation with one another. We also had the chance to discuss our bilateral cooperation to promote economic security by countering technology transfers, intellectual property theft, and other attempts to acquire sensitive technology from our two countries. This will enhance security by ensuring our economic competitiveness and preserving our military capabilities. These joint efforts support a comprehensive trading relationship and millions of jobs in our two countries. In addition to domestic priorities, we worked through a range of global issues as well. We talked about our work and collaboration as members of NATO. We discussed our response to the situation in Ukraine. I expressed my concern over Russia's recent aggression in the Sea of Azov, where it rammed and opened fire on Ukrainian vessels. We also had the important opportunity to discuss our shared commitment to improving security in Iraq, where our nations have both made tremendous sacrifices in the name of freedom. I spoke too of the importance of applying pressure on the Iranian regime to stop its efforts to undermine Iraq's democracy and security. It was great to talk about how we've worked closely together on North Korea, and I thanked my Canadian counterparts for enforcing all of the UN Security Council resolutions and encouraging other countries to maintain pressure as well. Of course, given the close relationship between the United States and Canada, disagreements will undoubtedly arise from time to time. But our countries have always worked closely together to resolve these challenges, including through regular and open dialogue like we've had here today. I'm very confident that as rough patches emerge, we'll work through each of those challenges. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Foreign Minister Freeland to make a few remarks, and then if you'd introduce Secretary Mattis, that'd be great.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. Merci beaucoup. Bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être venu aujourd'hui.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. First of all, I would like to thank the Secretary of State Pompeo and the Secretary of Defense Mattis for their warm welcome today. Canada and the US have one of the closest relationships in the whole entire world. We are allies and partners in areas such as trade, border protection, and of course, hemispheric defense and international security, especially through NATO and NORAD. I would like to thank our hosts for giving us the opportunity to meet here today and to further discuss these topics, as well as other issues of common interest for our two countries.
There are no closer partners in the world than Canada and the United States. We share the world's longest undefended border, and we are each other's largest export market. Since the Second World War, we have worked side by side to build the rules-based international order and to fight for liberal democracy around the world. This 2+2 meeting has been in the works for a while, and it is a real pleasure to have been able to spend some time with our U.S. colleagues here in Washington to discuss our bilateral relationship and also some of the global challenges that we're confronting together. As is always the case when we meet, we discussed a number of issues around foreign policy, defense, and international security that reflect the deeply shared values that unite our two countries. We discussed China and the case of Huawei CFO Meng Wanzhou, building on a conversation that Secretary Pompeo and I began soon after her arrest. We all agree that the most important thing we can do is to uphold the rule of law, ensure that Ms. Meng's right to due process is respected, and that the current judicial process in Canada remains apolitical. We also discussed some consular issues, too, which are very concerning for Canada today, the detention of Michael Kovrig and Michael Sapler. On Russia and Ukraine, Minister Sajjan and I expressed our condemnation of Russia's harassment of shipping in the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait, and in particular its recent aggressive action towards an illegal seizure of 3 Ukrainian vessels on November 25th and the imprisonment of Ukrainian sailors. We call on Russia to release these sailors. Canada unwaveringly supports the people of Ukraine, its sovereignty and territorial integrity within its internationally recognized borders. We touched on some hemispheric issues, including the brutal authoritarian regime that is causing a dangerous crisis in Venezuela, as well as troubling developments in Nicaragua. We took the opportunity to reiterate our support for the United States' efforts towards a denuclearized Korean peninsula and our efforts in the area of sanctions evasion. In an ever-changing global landscape, it's important that countries are able to nimbly respond to flagrant violations of the international order. An effective and targeted sanctions regime is key to this. Canada and the U.S. both have Magnitsky legislation, and we discussed ways to work together even more closely in this area. As a founding member of NATO, Canada will continue to do its part for transatlantic security and stability. My colleague, Minister Sajjan, will speak to some of the important work that we're doing alongside the U.S. and NATO and as part of the global coalition to defeat Daesh. As Mike said, we spoke about our trading relationship, and we talked about the fact that we now have a modernized trade agreement for our continent, and I do agree with Mike that this is a big deal for all 3 countries. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that Minister Sajjan and I did raise one of those difficult bilateral issues that Mike referred to, the U.S. imposition of steel and aluminum tariffs under Section 232. Canada continues to take the view that these tariffs are unjust and illegal, and we spoke to our partners about how the national security justification for these tariffs we believe is inconsistent with our close relationship. I met earlier today with Ambassador Lighthizer, and we also discussed the 232 tariffs this morning. The close relationship between Canada and the United States is a model for integration and creative collaboration on the world stage, and today was a great opportunity to talk about how we can work even more closely together on our continent and around the world. I'd like to thank you again, Secretary Pompeo, Secretary Mattis, for hosting us. Canada deeply values and appreciates our partnership and opportunities to continue to work even more closely together. And it is now my pleasure to introduce a tremendous public servant, a great friend of Canada, Secretary Mattis.
Well, thank you, Minister Freeland.
Merci, Madame la ministre Freeland. Et je rejoins les propos du secrétaire Pompeo qu'il s'est agi effectivement d'une discussion entre amis. Le ministre Sajan et moi-même nous sommes vus la dernière fois il y a à peine 8 jours à Ottawa et la rencontre d'aujourd'hui montre que nos forces armées demeurent étroitement alignées sur un ensemble de dossiers à l'échelle mondiale. Les Américains sentent une parenté presque familiale avec les Canadiens. Et dans mon cas, c'est effectivement familial. La famille de ma mère a immigré aux États-Unis. Mon grand-père a été blessé au combat durant la Première Guerre mondiale en tant que fantassin canadien. Les forces canadiennes et américaines ont lutté courageusement côte à côte pendant la Grande Guerre, en Normandie, à Kandahar, en Afghanistan, ou après les attentats du 11 septembre contre notre pays. Aujourd'hui, nous poursuivons notre coopération à la recherche de cette sécurité mutuelle. Nous sommes unis au sein du NORAD, où les combattants canadiens et américains, ensemble, protègent les ciels de l'Amérique du Nord et de nos 360 millions d'habitants. Nous sommes unis au sein de l'OTAN, où nous maintenons l'unité transatlantique et nous tenons solidaires avec nos alliés européens contre l'influence malveillante de la Russie qui comprend la violation éhontée du droit international par Moscou dans le détroit de Kerch contre le peuple ukrainien. Les formateurs canadiens et américains en Ukraine de l'Ouest et les bataillons dans les États baltes représentent nos efforts combinés pour accroître la stabilité et dissuader des activités provocatives. Nous sommes unis parce que nous sommes unis au sein de la démocratie et les démocraties se tiennent solidaires pour la défense commune. Aujourd'hui, nous nous sommes concentrés sur le renforcement de notre coopération déjà forte dans plusieurs domaines. Il y a les ventes militaires à l'étranger, la coordination des sanctions. À l'instar du secrétaire Pompeo, je suis reconnaissant du leadership canadien pour faire respecter unanimement les résolutions du Conseil de sécurité de l'ONU en matière de sanctions en soutien de la dénucléarisation de la Corée du Nord. S'agissant du Moyen-Orient, nous avons affirmé le besoin de poursuivre la lutte contre le noyau dur de Daesh en Syrie et de maintenir notre soutien auprès des partenaires en Irak, une approche avalisée par les 16 pays qui se sont rencontrés la semaine dernière à Ottawa. Par conséquent, nous évoluons notre coalition pour vaincre Daesh, qui ne doit pas faire preuve de paresse, reconnaissant que Daesh demeure un ennemi terroriste fort à mesure qu'il s'adapte contre ces défaites écrasantes. Pour conclure, le mois dernier, les Américains ont célébré le jour des combattants, le jour du souvenir pour les Canadiens. Quoi que soit le nom, nous nous souvenons des sacrifices consentis par nos compatriotes, qu'il s'agisse de la feuille d'érable ou de la bannière étoilée. Ensemble, nous avons combattu pour défendre nos valeurs. Quoi qu'il puisse arriver, je suis confiant que le Canada et les États-Unis vont continuer de travailler côte à côte à l'avenir. Monsieur le Sajan, vous avez la parole.
Great. Thank you, Secretary Mattis,
Merci,
and
le secrétaire
thank you, Secretary
Mattis.
Pompeo, for your
Merci,
being
monsieur le
tremendous host.
secrétaire Pompeo et Madame la ministre pour vos remarques
Secretary Mattis and I
liminaires.
also share another mutual
Le
understanding, which is
secrétaire
we're both from the
Mattis
West
avons
Coast as well,
également
which he
des points
reminded me
communs
of
que nous sommes tous les
early
deux
on.
de la côte
As my
ouest.
colleague, Minister Freeland
À
said, we have
l'instar
had
de ma
productive
collègue
meetings to
Mme
discuss
Freeland,
our shared
nous avons
defense
des réunions
priorities.
productives
The United States
pour
is
parler
Canada's
des
most
priorités en matière de
important
défense. Les
ally and
États-Unis
defense
et le
partner.
Canada sont
Our
les alliés les
relationship
plus
is
importants en matière de
long-standing,
défense. Notre
deeply
relation est
entrenched and
pérenne,
multifaceted.
fortement enracinée et
Our
polyvalente.
relationship
Elle
was
est
forged
ancrée
on the
dans notre
battlefield, side
géographie
by
commune.
side
Elle a
by
été
side. It
forgée
is
dans les
rooted
champs
in
de
our shared
bataille côte à
geography,
côte.
in
Nous
our
sommes
common
unis par la
values,
géographie, par nos valeurs
in our
communes
historic
et par
connections,
nos liens
in our highly
historiques
integrated
et nos
economies.
économies sont fortement
And
intégrées.
it is unique in its
Et cela
levels
est
of
tout à fait
integration
unique
and
en ce qui concerne ce
military-to-military
niveau
cooperation at
d'intégration
all
des
levels
coopérations
and
de militaires
across the globe.
militaires à tous les
The
niveaux
Canadian
et
Armed
à
Forces
l'échelle
and the
mondiale.
United States
Les
military
forces
stand shoulder to
armées
shoulder
canadiennes et
to
américaines se
protect
tiennent côte
and
à côte
defend the
pour protéger
continent
et
of our
défendre le
citizens.
continent pour nos
NORAD is the
citoyens.
most
Le
notable
NORAD
example of
constitue
this
l'exemple le plus
cooperation.
évident de cette
We have been working
coopération.
together
Nous travaillons
seamlessly
côte à
for
côte
over
sans
60
faille
years
depuis
since
plus de
its
60 ans,
inception
depuis la
to protect
création
North
du
American
NORAD
against
pour
current
protéger
and
l'Amérique du
future
Nord
threats.
contre des
Our
menaces
militaries are
actuelles ou
highly
futures.
interoperable.
Nos forces armées
We are
sont
constantly
fortement
learning from each
interopérables.
other
On
through our
apprend
regional,
constamment les uns après
continental,
les
and
autres
international
au niveau
exercises.
d'exercices
We
régionaux,
provide
continentaux et
collective
internationaux.
transatlantic defense
Nous
through
assurons
NATO.
la défense
We are participating
transatlantique
in
commune par le biais
multinational
de
efforts
l'OTAN.
also to
Nous participons
enforce
aux efforts
sanctions
multinationaux pour faire
against North
respecter les
Korea.
sanctions de l'ONU
At
contre
the
la Corée du Nord.
UN
Et au sein
command in
du
Korea,
commandement
Canada
de l'ONU
is the
en
second
Corée,
largest
le
contributor
Canada
after
est le
the
deuxième
US.
contributeur
And
du
earlier
groupe
this
après les
year,
États-Unis.
General
Et en
Eyre
début d'année,
became
le
the
général
first
Eyre est
Canadian to
devenu le tout
hold
premier
the post
Canadien
of deputy
à
commander.
occuper le
And
poste de
last week,
commandant adjoint.
as Secretary
Et la semaine
Mattis just said,
dernière,
Canada co-hosted the counter-ISIS ministerial meeting in Ottawa, and we discussed the next steps to ensure the lasting defeat of Daesh and its networks, and Canada remains committed to the coalition. This is evident through our Operation Impact and our leadership of the NATO training mission in Iraq. As Minister Freeland mentioned, Canada also supports Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity in the face of Russian aggression. We have trained more than 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers as part of Operation Unify. And at any given time, we have about over 800 Canadian Armed Forces members deployed on Operation Reassurance, and they are supporting NATO deterrence measures in Eastern and Central Europe alongside our American allies. Canada is also leading NATO's Enhanced Forward Presence Battle Group in Latvia, similar to the U.S. presence in Poland, and we have recently extended this mission by 4 years. In the Asia-Pacific region, Canada is engaged in off-projection and working with the U.S. and other partners on regional security and defense cooperations. And ladies and gentlemen, these are just a few examples of the depth and breadth of the Canada-U.S. defense partnership. Our cooperation offers both countries greater securities. We will always remain strong allies and partners and even better friends.
We now have time for a few questions. We would ask each reporter to please limit your question to one and no follow-ups, please. For the first question, I'd like to call on the BBC, Barbara Plett-Usher.
A question to the Secretaries of State and Defense. Yesterday, the Senate voted to withdraw troops from Yemen, or to end U.S. military involvement there, I should say, and to unanimously censor Mohammed bin Salman as responsible for the Khashoggi killing. What is your response? What action will you take? And can you afford to ignore this? And to the Canadian Foreign Minister, are you concerned that President Trump's comments linking trade and the Huawei case suggests a perception that Canada is acting on the Americans' behalf in a trade war? And are you worried that Canada is becoming collateral damage in what is a trade tension between China and the United States? Because China has arrested Canadians, but on the other hand, it has agreed to suspend tariffs on U.S. cars.
So perhaps I'll begin. So we certainly saw the vote yesterday. We always have great respect for what the legislative branch does, and we're in constant contact with members on Capitol Hill so that we understand fully their concerns and do our level best to articulate why our policies are what they are and how we can ensure that we're getting the right policy for the United States of America and to keep our country safe. And we will certainly do that in light of yesterday's vote. And President Trump's been very clear about the importance, not only importance of holding accountable those who murdered Jamal Khashoggi, but the importance of protecting American citizens. Hundreds of thousands of people that the Iranians killed and been involved in their deaths all across the Middle East. There's real risk to the United States of America. You'll recall that the Iranians and their explosive devices killed hundreds of American soldiers, and President Trump is determined to make sure that we protect America, all the while holding accountable those who committed the heinous murder of Jamal Khashoggi.
I don't want to repeat what the Secretary said. I'll just add that besides that vote yesterday in the Senate, which we respect, there was also progress announced by the UN Secretary General in Stockholm to end the war, which required our engagement with all the parties and a strategic approach to ending that war that has gone on too long.
Okay, when it comes to the case of the detention of Ms. Meng, Canada is a rule of law country. We believe in honoring our international treaty commitments and in respecting the rule of law and due process in our own country. In the case of Ms. Meng, due process and rule of law in Canada has been scrupulously followed. There has been no political interference in this process. It's very important for Canada that Ms. Meng be treated with full respect and be given full access to due process in Canada, as she has been. She has currently been, by the decision of a Canadian judge, released on bail.
libéré sous caution par un juge au
When
Canada.
it comes
Et
to
s'agissant
the rule of law and due process
de
in
l'état de
Canada,
droit et de la procédure judiciaire
including
en
in
bonne et due forme au
extradition
Canada,
matters,
également les questions d'extradition,
Canada
le Canada
understands
comprend
that
que
the rule of law and extradition issues
les questions relevant de l'état de droit et
ought not
d'extradition
ever to be politicized
ne doivent
or
jamais être
used
placées de
as
côté
tools
ou
to
utilisées
resolve
en
other
tant
issues,
qu'outils
and that is the very
pour
clear
d'autres
position
questions, et cela est une
which
position
Canada
tout à fait claire.
expresses to all of its partners.
Et
It's the
le
position
Canada
which I have
honore ses partenaires.
explained,
C'est la position que j'ai
particularly with regard to
expliquée,
rule of law in
particulièrement
Canada,
s'agissant de
in a
l'état de droit au Canada,
conversation with the Chinese
dans le cadre
ambassador
de
to
mes
Canada
conversations avec
earlier
l'ambassadeur
this
de
week, and it's an
Chine
issue
au
which all
Canada
of
en
us
début de
discussed
semaine.
today. And I
Et
do just finally want to say, because
finalement, je
you've
souhaite
mentioned the
dire,
two
parce que
Canadians
vous
who
avez
are
parlé
detained in China,
du fait que des
it's
Canadiens ont
really
été arrêtés
important to
en Chine,
remember
il faut se
these are
souvenir
human beings.
que ce sont des êtres humains.
As foreign minister, I
Et en
think
tant
for
que
me
ministre
and
des
for
Affaires
the Prime
étrangères, pour
Minister,
moi-même et pour le Premier
there are
ministre,
no issues
il
that
n'y a
touch us more personally
aucune question
and
qui nous touche plus
immediately
proche et personnellement
than
dans
the
l'immédiat
detention of
que la
Canadians
détention de
outside
citoyens
our country.
canadiens à
We're
l'étranger.
very, very seized of the
Nous
issue. We're
sommes
very
très interpellés
concerned
par cette
about these
question.
two Canadians,
Nous sommes
and that
préoccupés
is
de
a
la situation de
concern
ces deux
that we
Canadiens
discussed in our meeting
et
today.
c'est une préoccupation qui a fait l'objet de discussions
Prochaine question,
aujourd'hui.
Christian Latray de Radio-Canada.
If you don't mind, I will ask my question in French, and maybe Mr. Freeland
Je vais
can
poser
answer
la question,
in
la
French and
question en
English
français,
after.
Madame pour répondre.
Madame
Freelander, do you have the impression currently that Canada is paying a heavy price for having been involved in this Huawei case and having charged the CFO of Huawei? And some of our citizens have been arrested in China. Do you have the impression that you're being used currently and we are being stuck between the United States and China in this trade war against your will, and you are being used politically currently by the United States?
I'm not in complete agreement with the question the way it was phrased, because for Canada, it was not the detention of Ms. Meng was not a political decision on Canada's part. It was a matter of following the rules. It's a matter of obligations on the part of Canada to follow through with its obligations under international agreements. Canada follows the rule of law. Canada follows rules. It is very important, especially when there's a lot of pressure on the very idea of democracy in the world, when there's a lot of pressure on international order. Canada will thus continue to follow the rules. This is a strong position of our governments. By the same token, it is also very important for Canada that extradition agreements are not used for political purposes. Canada does not do it that way, and I believe that it is obvious that democratic countries, such as our partner, the US, do the same. Today, we talked about our shared values, and one of them is the fact that both countries, the US and Canada, are countries that follow the rule of law and follow rules in general.
I don't entirely agree with the framing of the question. Canada, in detaining Ms. Meng, was not making a political judgment. In Canada, there has been, to this point, no political interference in this issue at all. For Canada, this is a question of living up to our international treaty obligations and following the rule of law in Canada, and that is something which has happened scrupulously. Canada is a rule of law country, We discussed a little bit in our opening remarks how Canada and the United States are countries with deeply shared democratic values. Those democratic values include the fact that in both countries we have a deep regard for the rule of law and strong and independent judiciaries. I think that's one of the reasons that Canada and the United States and both Canadians and Americans feel comfortable with the existence of an extradition treaty between our two countries. And having said all of that, Canada is clearly of the view that the extradition process is a criminal justice process. This is not a tool that should be used for politicized ends.
You didn't ask me, but if I may, I'm just going to answer it.
Oui, si vous me permettez, je vais répondre en anglais.
Thank you.
Je vous remercie.
I can't say much about the process because we have a U.S. judicial process that is underway, an extradition process that is underway. I can say this, the unlawful detention of 2 Canadian citizens is unacceptable. They ought to be returned. The United States has stood for that, whether they're our citizens or citizens of other countries. We ask all nations of the world to treat other citizens properly, and the detention of these 2 Canadian citizens in China ought to end.
CNN, Elise Lavitt.
CNN, Alice Lavitte.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I'd like to follow up on your remarks just now. It does seem as if China is using the detention of these 2 Canadian citizens as kind of a bargaining chip on the trade talks between the U.S. and China. And I think the minister alluded to that when she suggested that these type of detentions are so concerning and shouldn't be politicized. Do you think that's what China's doing here? And are you concerned that with President Trump's suggestion that he might be willing to get involved in this other case of Miss Mang in Canada, that further puts Canada in a difficult situation and kind of puts Canada in the middle of your trade dispute with China? Thank you very much.
I don't see it that way. The United States is engaged in an extradition process. Ms. Meng traveled to Canada. Canadians have taken her into custody, now released her on bail pending extradition, an extradition hearing. We'll continue to engage through legal processes to get the just outcome that's connected to that. We have a set of trade discussions that are ongoing with the Chinese. As the Chinese have said, we're working on that while all the other issues, not just this particular issue, we have lots of complicated issues going on with China today all around the world. And we work on each of those to get good outcomes for the people of the United States of America and respecting the rule of law each step along the way. We'll do that here as well.
Et c'est ce que nous ferons ici, nous aussi.
Next question, Adrienne Moreau, Globe and Mail.
Question suivante, Adrienne Moreau.
Minister, it's clear. It seems. Sorry, Minister Freeland. It's clear that that these 2 Canadians were appear to have been detained as a Chinese retaliation against the Huawei situation. Why won't you sort of acknowledge that directly? And then as well, what is how is Michael Kovrig doing? Our ambassador, met with him in Beijing. And Secretary Pompeo, is there anything that the U.S. is going to do to sort of lean on China to get them to release these people who've been detained? Given that President Trump appears to have quite a good relationship with President Xi, is there anything that you guys will do to sort of help Canada get these guys back?
Yeah, we're going to work to get every citizen unlawfully detained all around the world returned to the country to which they have the very right to go back to. We do this in cases for our own people all the time. It's something, as Christy said, weighs on those of us who serve to try and make sure that our citizens do have the opportunity to be returned home to their families. We always believe in that. We'll always work on it, and we'll do it in this case as well.
Thank you for that, Mike. So, Adrienne, I have spoken this week with the Chinese ambassador to Canada, and we've had many contacts with Chinese authorities. Chinese officials, in their contact with Canada, have not drawn a connection between these different issues. From Canada's perspective, these kinds of issues ought never to be confused with one another. In the detention of Ms. Ming, Canada was, as I've said, acting scrupulously in line with our treaty commitments and in line with the rule of law. And as Mike has said, the next step while Ms. Ming is on bail in Vancouver is for a Canadian court and Canadian judges to rule on whether the extradition is warranted or not. Of course, Canadian citizen, we will always advocate strongly and fiercely for Canadian citizens when they are detained abroad. In the cases of Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Satfor, our immediate concern has been to gain consular access to them and to understand what the charges are being put on them by the Chinese authorities, and we are seeking that. We're advocating for them very, very aggressively. Ambassador McCallum was able now to see and speak with and meet with Mr. Kovrig, and we're glad that that could happen. I've spoken also to family members of both men, and I just want to say and reassure all Canadians, but especially the family and friends of Mr. Kovrig, Mr. Satfor, this is a huge priority for our government. We are extremely seized of this issue. We care for, we fight for all Canadians detained abroad. And actually, as Mike said, you know, all people unfairly detained abroad, but it's specifically, we have a specific duty of care to Canadians, and we fight for everybody. Mr. Kovrig is also an employee of my department. He's well known to many Canadian diplomats, and that makes it especially personal for us. You know what? I'm gonna respect his privacy and the privacy of his family. We've shared with his family details of the meeting.
Thank you all for attending today. That concludes our press conference.
Merci beaucoup. Notre conférence de presse prend maintenant.
All right, everyone, back in the newsroom here at Fox 5. That was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo joining Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis, talking to the Canadian Foreign Minister there on U.S.-Canada relations. And that will sort of round out our stream today here on Fox 5 Live in D.C. We'll have another stream for you next week on Tuesday, so we'll be joining you then. Have a great weekend. And if you're in the DMV area, do know it is going to be a little bit of a soggy weekend. We have an awesome weather update on our new weather app that you can download right to your phone if you're in the DMV and that is of interest to you. Don't forget to check that out over the weekend. We'll be on that and keeping that updated as well. So with that, guys, we'll catch you next week. Have a great weekend and happy almost Christmas. We're dwindling down those days to the end of December. It's coming so fast. We'll be back with more live news from Fox 5 Live coming up just in a few short days here on our stream. Thanks for joining.